Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order and welcome you to the Hamden Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. I see that David Sanders from Wilbraham Public Access channel is recording. Is there anyone else here recording this meeting? We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Cheryl Caruana. Here. Tim Collins.
Present.
Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray.
Here.
Rick Tredeker.
Here.
Mike Tirabassi.
Yep.
Michelle Buja. Here. This is, we haven't all been together sitting at the table, all of them, so it's nice to see you all. So if you would please stand, Lisa will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we are going to begin with our student representatives. We have Alina Bergeron here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I just want to talk a little bit about what Student Council is doing right now, because I believe that we have one of our most successful events upcoming. We have a brand new pickleball tournament that we're hosting at Great Horse, and they're giving us like a whole portion of their facility for free. And so you can enter a team for $20, and we're going to have food trucks, raffle baskets. Even if you're not playing, because you're required to attend Minnesota to play, you can also go and hang out with your friends, watch other people play, and the best part of it all is an amazing portion of the proceeds will go to the C.J. Cronin Memorial Scholarship. So we are so incredibly happy, and we really think it's going to be successful this year. As well as, if you noticed on your way in, we have a huge wall of hearts and successful positive messages out in the front. It is National You Are Beautiful Week is what we call it. And so we basically just like to spread positivity throughout the school, and everyone really comes together. I've heard so much that everyone loves signing their name on the wall and putting their name next to their friends and giving their friends little sticky notes with positive messages. And it's just, as we're coming to a close and a lot of kids get burnt out, it's a really positive thing that students can just uplift each other and help them get through the rest of the year.
Thank you. Any questions for Eileen?
No, congratulations on the award that your school council just received. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So at MASC every year, we receive an award for the Council of Excellence. And so it's under a nationally recognized student council, and we happen to have had that award for several years, but we just became a Gold Council of Excellence a few years back as well. And so every year at MASC, the annual conference, they give us like a nice plaque and a nice ribbon to wear that we are a Gold Council of Excellence, and we are also nationally recognized.
Congratulations. That's great.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to continue with new business, so we will invite Julie to get up, supply the microphone, and she's going to discuss local sourcing school lunches. Thanks for being here tonight.
Nice to see everybody. It's been a little bit of time since I've been here. I was asked to come and talk about how we are using local foods in our school meal program. So I'm just going to highlight some of the things that we have been doing. Last year we actually got an $18,810 grant to purchase local foods through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. The Northeast Food for Schools grant was allocated to schools to use towards the purchase of meat, vegetables, and dairy products, all produced within 400 miles of your school's location. We utilized this money last year for milk and dairy from HP Hood, which all of the milk that comes to our school are from Massachusetts cows. And we forged a relationship with Wellspring Harvest, which is in Indian Orchard, Massachusetts. If you're not familiar with it, they are a hydroponic lettuce farm. It's right in Indian Orchard. It's really very cool. I've been there. Actually, I go all the time because I have to go pick it up myself. But they actually grow lettuce right here in Indian Orchard. So we have kind of a unique relationship in talking with him. Unfortunately, he couldn't commit to an amount that we could use every week because we don't continue over the summer. So he has to be able to supply his Big Y and those accounts that he uses through the summer. So what he does is every Thursday when he has extra products available, he'll text me and say, I have 10 cases this week, can you use them? I happen to live very close to there, so on Friday morning, I go pick it up and then deliver it to the schools. So some weeks we don't get anything, some weeks we get 20 cases, some weeks we get 10 cases. It's a relationship that's worked really well for us, and it especially works because I can go pick it up. That is one of the challenges in securing local foods, is getting farmers that will actually deliver to all our schools. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we had entered an agreement to participate in this program for the next 2 years, and actually Massachusetts was slated to get almost double the money that they had gotten the first year of the program. But that funding, I'm sure you've heard, has recently been canceled by the USDA after it was determined that agreement no longer effectuates agency priorities. So that was a bit of a blow to all the schools that have forged relationships. But even without the money, we continue to purchase lettuce from them as much as available. Whenever they have it, we certainly go get it. We continue to support Massachusetts dairy farmers through the purchase of local milk with our contract with HP Hood. And the other way we use local produce, we use AC Produce, who's a company out of Springfield, Massachusetts, who is our weekly produce delivery. Again, one of the great things about our relationship with AC Produce is he will stop at every one of my schools, whether they have a $40 order or a $300 order at our high school. So that's very unique. He'll deliver 2 pints of cherry tomatoes to Green Meadows, way out in Green Meadows School, and he doesn't give us any minimums for delivery. He knows that we want to prioritize local farms, so whenever he can, when that product is available, he will make that available to the schools, and he uses a wide variety of schools throughout northern Connecticut and farms throughout northern Connecticut and western Massachusetts. We also receive what we call entitlement dollars from USDA. As you all know, school lunch is pretty complicated, so there's all sorts of little pots of money. So we get an entitlement amount every year, and there's 3 ways we can use that money: what they call brown box commodity, which is kind of your cheese, meat, frozen vegetables. You can send some of that money to distributors to take, say we send a pizza company cheese, and then we pay less for that pizza. And the third way, which came about maybe 3-4 years ago, we participate in the DoD fresh fruit and vegetable program. So every week we get fresh fruits and vegetables. Why it's through the DoD, I'm not entirely sure. But when that listing comes up every week, they do highlight what's local. So we always choose the local product first. The biggest thing we get from them, and that's weekly, is sliced apples, and they're mostly from New York farms. And we probably go through 15 to 20 cases a week of sliced apples. And as the seasons move around, their other pieces of produce will be local. We always take the local options. We've also worked with Rice's in their new location in East Long Meadow. And again, we kind of have that relationship when they have a surplus of product. He calls me and says, I have 10 cases of apples this week, can you take them? And he will bring them to the high school and we will distribute. Again, that's a little bit tricky because he has to keep enough apples for his regular suppliers and for his store, but when there's an abundance in his harvest, he will certainly give you a call. Last is obviously our most local produce of all, which you may have seen the pictures in my report, is we purchased 2 grow towers for the district a couple years ago. We actually had purchased them for our TWB transition program. But when that program moved to the high school, they didn't feel like they would have enough space. They did take up some space. So I offered those to our science teachers, and we had Mrs. Barrett at Green Meadows and Mrs. Goonan at Stony Hill, who were so eager to accept those. And I'll just read the recent email from Mrs. Barrett. Good morning. I just wanted to say thank you again for this amazing opportunity of the Tower Garden. We grew 5 different varieties of greens, and then students were able to taste them and vote for their favorite. After all the students had a chance to try them, we harvested the rest and gave them to Kim to make us a Green Meadows salad to go with our pizza today, keeping our students loving science and eating healthy. So that's been a real win. We provide all the supplies for that, so any fertilizer, if they need more soil, if they need seeds, and those are available to any science teacher that wants them. Some of the curriculum didn't quite match up with it, which is why those teachers said they couldn't use it, but there's certainly still opportunity out there. We're always looking for relationships with local farmers. I'd say the biggest obstacles that we have here in Hampden Wilbraham, as opposed to some of the bigger districts, is our size. our location and having actual local farmers that will deliver to individual schools nearby. So, and obviously the lack of alignment with the growing season for produce is obviously most of London in the summer, and schools mostly aren't in session in the summer, so that's something that schools struggle with. So that is what I prepared for tonight. I'm certainly willing to take any questions that anyone may have.
I just have a comment.
Thank you.
Have you thought of putting in an article that describes all this into the Wilbraham Times?
Great idea.
Because I don't think any of the people who aren't really connected to the schools know about this, and it should be spread and it should be applauded.
Great idea, Sean.
Yeah, thank you for coming here. I would say we should probably have you in here more often. I mean, you know, food is critical for education, as I've heard teachers say so many times. When a student has a nice full belly, they're more apt to absorb the education that's being given to them. They come in, if they have food insecurities and they come in hungry or don't have enough for lunch or something like that, you know, it's not going to help the student in the atmosphere. So I applaud the work that you're doing, and you've been here before I think I came on here, so you've been doing a great job, so thank you. I do think that I would really like to see a move away from processed foods, and to really push that if we can. You know, we were talking about baking bread or maybe doing something like that. But if you understand, like, our cafeterias are more warming centers than they are actually, you know, real cafeterias where you create something from scratch. And the employees that we have, the beautiful thing about them is they interact with every student every day, and they're one of the few groups in our schools that touch, other than, you know, teachers, that touch the lives of every student. So I would like to see, and whatever we can do to help you with this. I've talked with people from different school districts around Western Massachusetts, and there's some exciting ideas and stuff floating around, and you're doing a lot of them, which is amazing. And what I do want to show, that I think this is absolutely brilliant, in that email from Mrs. Barrett at Green Meadows School, where she said that she had a taste test with the students, and they got to vote on the one that they liked the most. So that's getting investment from your students, and that's so great. You know, you get something you want to try, rather than just throwing it on their plate. You say, hey, let's do a taste test. Which do you like better, this or this? And then it kind of becomes a competition. And then I would say take it a step further, kind of along Cheryl's line, is start a communication with the parents. Let the parents know what you're doing. Get their buy-in. Get their support on the stuff that you're doing. Because wouldn't it be great if you know, we could train the people at all the cafeterias to be chef level, right? And we could have food that was just you know, the top-notch cuisine. But you also have to bring the students along with that, you know, because I'm sure right now, if we look at the barrels of trash at the end of lunch at any of the schools, there's a lot of really great food in the trash. So you have to get the parents on board, and you have to get the students on board, really, to be able to change their eating habits.
For sure. I will share just one little other piece of information which I just found out, is that Minichog was just actually accepted into a culinary advancement plan through the John Stalker Institute, which is run at Framingham State College. So it will start with our staff, which they will do on May 23rd, our next half day. There's a culinary video series that they'll participate in. We'll have an in-person training in August. And if we go through those steps, there's a possibility that we'll be selected to get 12 in-person chef visits next year to help train our staff. This might be the first time they're hearing about it, so I'm sure they'll be very enthusiastic.
That is brilliant. That is great. Thank you, Julie. Again, excellent. Thank you.
And, I will also say it is interesting, I've been out in the schools quite a bit lately. We've had some people out, and I was at Stony Hill, one of my favorite schools to visit. I just love that age of kids, and they're very interactive and have a lot to say, but we had chicken tacos that day, and I'll tell you that black bean salsa the fresh black bean corn salsa was a tough sell. I was serving maybe 1 out of 20, and I got to even put it on their tray. just try a little, just a little bit. But
Julie, are you still running, I know you used to do things at the schools with, Taste on the Green, where you bring in different vegetables for students during their lunchtime to taste, maybe vegetables they're familiar with, or things that they weren't familiar with. Are you still doing things like that?
it's actually interesting. I was just thinking back on Taste of the Green, and that program used to be sponsored by the Y. And COVID, that's with a lot of things kind of put the damper on that. I also used to have an intern from UMass that used to do a monthly tasting series. So she would do the recipe and do the taste tests. So I need to get back in touch with UMass to get back on that intern list. And hopefully the Taste of Green will be back again next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We will continue with discussion on the school committee badge entry. John?
Sure, I think we're just looking for some guidance and direction from the committee on how they want to handle badges and what they're able to access. Had to update some badges.
John, I think so. There you go.
Sorry. Oh, I think I have the one that always dies.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, I think this one is a little bit more reliable. So just looking for some guidance and direction from the school committee on how they want to handle their badges. You have some coming up for renewal, and need to know what you want to have your members have access to.
So what is the current setup? So every school committee, when they join, they receive a badge. What's the badge for?
So
What do they currently have access for? And what is the committee's parameters?
So currently, members have access to central office, to badge in there where a lot of the meetings are held, and the chair has a badge that can get into any building.
I guess when I initially saw the agenda, I wasn't sure what the school committee badge entry was going to be about. But personally, I don't use the badge for anything, and I don't think I should have access to any of the buildings in the district because it's not school committee business. I just never use mine. If we have a school committee meeting, it's an open meeting, so the doors are going to be open anyways. Otherwise, if I'm going to a school, it's as a parent, so I enter as a parent. And there hasn't, as long as I've been on, there hasn't been a reason for me to ever on my own enter a building. It's always been for a purpose, and I don't know. I don't use my badge entry at all. I also don't like the responsibility of having the badge, to be honest with you, because if I lose it and then somebody finds the badge and then they have access to a building, my badge at my own school is enough responsibility for me, which I have only lost once, which gives you a heart attack because you don't know where you lost it. And if somebody takes it and it says the name of the school, and then you're worried about somebody entering the building. So me personally, I don't need my badge entry for anything.
Mine in my car, and it's been there ever since I got it. Never used it, never needed it, it wasn't able to get anywhere I needed to go by pressing a button or whatever.
I think the only time that I wanted my badge to open a door where it didn't was that door there. I think a number of us like the parking lot there, and that door is always locked. So, during school committee hours, I think some members might enjoy being able to go in that door, which is not a door that's left open and unlocked at any time of the day, normally. I have a question as we're discussing access and concerns Lisa brought up. If a badge is lost it can be deactivated if it's reported?
Correct.
Okay, it's not like a key to the kingdom and can never be deactivated and,
You don't understand, Mike, I had to try to find it before I turned myself into school, because then I would get in trouble.
no, I understand, I have badges to children's hospital units and actually more than I would like. So I don't have strong feelings on this, but that was the only thing that I would point out. I think one time the door was, I thought the door was locked, but it was just a different door that was open, and so I let someone open it, but
I think if we look back on, I think the policy is that the school committee has to wear a badge inside a building, as in any administration does. So no matter what building we go into, we're supposed to wear the badge, whether we come in as a parent or not. We are always a school committee member, you know, as we are also always a parent. So I thought that was the policy. I just got my badge redone because I had the one from when I first started, you know, a while ago, and someone saw it and they thought it was fake because it had been, you know, it faded so much they just put a sticker over it and they're like, is this thing fake? Is this real? I mean, what's going on? So I thought that maybe we should have my badge redone, and I don't know if that's what started this, but if we don't need a badge and make it a policy that the school committee can be in the building and don't have to identify themselves as a school committee member or wear a badge, we could just change that policy. But I believe the policy does require all of us to wear a badge when on school grounds.
hence the reason I always have my badge.
Yes?
When we come in as a parent, are we supposed to, I mean, I know that they have the Raptor system, so when I buzz into I'll just use a personal example. If I'm trying to come to the high school, I'm going to press the buzzer, I'm going to announce myself as they ask, and then I'll be let in the 2 doors, and then I have to give them identification if I'm coming through. They scan your driver's license, and I also have to sign in on top of that and wear my, ID badge that it give me. And isn't that for security purposes too, for?
That's correct, and also for accountability. In the event that we had some kind of an incident while visitors are in the school, we have to try to account for the visitors.
Another question I don't actually know the answer to. Are school committee members required to be Corey checked?
The Corey check requirement is for students who, for staff members or volunteers who may have unsupervised access to students. So since the school committee members in the normal course of their duties would not have unsupervised access to students, they're not required to.
But we're talking about access to the building.
Well, right now,
So those might come together, right? If
Correct.
there was going to be, if there's someone's got a badge that could give them access to the building, then they probably should have to be quarried. I mean, I don't know, there's
Yeah,
probably nobody
it
here
makes
that's
sense.
not quarried because we've got teachers, we've got retired teachers, we've got volunteers. I don't know if everyone in the committee is quarried, but, you know, I think that's something to think about along with the access.
Back when I first started on the school committee, the school committee's badges got you into every single building at all hours. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. So I talked with the superintendent, and then we brought it down to just the administration office during normal business hours, and then nothing else. And I think that's where it stands today, right? We only have access to badge in, I guess, so to speak, during normal business hours for the to go to the administration part, which I don't even necessarily think we need that. You know, we can always buzz ourselves in and identify ourselves. But I was told, again, you know, administration's changes, whatever, that I am always supposed to wear a badge when I'm on school grounds, even if I'm going to see my son to have lunch. Back in the day when we would go to Mile Tree and have lunch, I was still required to wear as if I was a teacher from another school, you'd wear your badge coming in. So I don't know if that's a policy we want to change or enforce or whatever, but that's always what I thought.
Well, as Member Boudreau was just explaining, when you enter the building as a visitor, you go through the normal check-in process, and you'd be either issued a visitor badge, or if you had your credentials with you, you could use that in lieu of a visitor badge. But you would still go through the process of checking in and going through the whole Raptor.
So you're saying you don't need to wear this when we're in the buildings?
I'm saying we'd either need that or a visitor badge, which Raptor currently.
So either, okay. So if someone forgot it, yeah, they'd get a Raptor badge and stuff. But it just happened at one time, I didn't have my badge, and I got a temporary thing, and I walked into the meeting, I walked into the building, and then a teacher had come up to me afterwards and said, I didn't know you were a school committee member. You know, I just thought you were a dad coming in. And they accused me of trying to like hide the fact that I was a school committee member, and I'm like, no. So I don't know. Whatever you guys want the policy to be, let's make it a policy.
So I'm going to say that I was thinking of tomorrow's technology or today's technology in many places of the world, and even at all different levels. But certainly at my house, everybody can get a unique number, and I can see who came, when they came. And nowadays, also, a bunch of states allow your driver's license to be on your phone. So Massachusetts isn't there yet. But you just show your driver's license from your phone. The idea is to get rid of everything, badges and everything else. When I was just overseas, they would take your picture, and when you walked into the airport, and after that, you didn't have to do anything. You get on you go through security, just looks your face. Gate opens up, no big deal. You get on a plane, you don't have to show your ticket or your passport, just right there. You hop on a plane, and they're doing that in airports here. They do it in almost every place over there. Immigration is just walk right in. They know who you are. And so there's a lot of things going on to avoid losing badges. Badges are gone. That's yesterday's technology. Having to carry something, a million keys. I don't have a single key anymore, period. And so the idea is I don't lose my phone because that's the one thing you have. And you have fingerprints to your phone and facial recognition to your phone, so people just can't pick it up. So you have all those things, and it's the way of the future. And you can monitor people coming and going with all different kinds of technologies without having a badge.
What is the rule for a teacher inside the building? Do they have to wear a badge?
I think, can I just clarify? So like, I think we shouldn't have to wear a badge when we visit buildings and stuff like that. I just don't think we should have the scanning.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, if
I think
wear
everyone
a
agrees that we
visitor
don't
thing,
need
I
scanning.
just don't need to be scanned into. I don't need to have access on my own to get into buildings. So if I was supposed to wear my badge, I apologize.
I've never been, I'm just saying that in my experience, I've never had anyone question me when I signed in the front office, or I've announced myself, or I was, whether it was they were having a parent-teacher conference, or coming to volunteer, or do whatever business in the school as a parent. I've never been questioned and somebody asking where my school committee badge was. Thankfully, I suppose, if that was your experience. But
Ever since it happened, I worn it every single time. Well, that I had a badge.
But I don't need access to the buildings.
I do think that it's good that there's access to the district office, even
Yeah.
though you often leave the door propped open for us when we have a meeting, quite thoughtfully. If we have that access, then you might not need to do that.
Actually, it's unlocked because it's an open meeting, and everyone has to be able to come into an open meeting.
So you have to leave
Yeah,
it
it has to
propped
be
Yep.
open. Yeah.
because it can't be unlocked.
Yeah, we don't need access anywhere for any reason, really.
is it common practice for districts and anyone's experience here that school committee members have access to all buildings at all times?
No, that's why we changed it. We had it here, and I agree. I don't even think we need any access at all. But having it just to identify ourselves is. So what was it about the teachers? So the teachers, they have to wear their badge. They don't have to wear their badge.
They have to wear their badge. It's also convenient because it's how you get into the building for your teacher. And you make copies, right? A lot of things are tied to the badge.
And for identification, right? So they know who a teacher is.
Mhm.
You got to think.
To Rich's point, there's other ways to know who's in your building, but having a badge, whether it's the sticker badge from Raptor or your teacher staff badge, is an easy way to see if this person has gotten into the building following appropriate channels. So it's nice to have that technology that, is super easy, but we need visuals sometimes to know, like, you checked in, you're okay.
So that you don't want us to have badges anymore? Should we turn them in? Or whatever you guys decide on policy, that's fine.
No, I think what use community, I mean, a good way for security, I mean, everybody needs to have, every adult should have a badge of some kind on their person, regardless of what it is, so that then the culture can be adapted, that if there's somebody without a badge, then somebody should be questioning what's going on. So, but that doesn't happen in high school after hours because the building's open.
If maybe there's a policy, maybe it should be revised and looked at. If the policy states that we all have to be wearing our school committee badges, or whatever the policy states, maybe that's something that you can review during policy subcommittee.
If the school committee saw fit to refer to the policy subcommittee, we would be delighted to discuss and review.
You seem like you've been late on meetings lately, so maybe this would be a little something too.
What's the general consensus? The general consensus is we don't need badges, we shouldn't have badges?
No, I'm fine with a badge, I just don't need access to buildings, I don't need to like scan into buildings. So that is what,
I think it's good for us to have badges. I don't have strong feelings about the access, except for what I pointed out, that there's, I think, one door that people would use a badge on. But I think it's, you know, I can understand how somebody who didn't know you were on the school committee then might have been concerned, because, I mean, you know, they don't, I don't know, they might be nervous to be in front of, you know, not to screw something up, or I don't know what they think they're gonna do, but I understand that, you know, people can have those feelings, and so, and I don't know, transparency, I think, is always the better part of valor, right? Rather than concealing things.
I think we had this conversation almost like that
I'm so sorry.
Mine is one more microphone.
I do something.
Thank you.
Okay, seems perfect.
It's broken, good. We had this conversation almost word about 3 years ago. At that point, I was the only one who religiously, that's because I'm Catholic, wore my badge wherever. And I thought, you know, I'm 1 of 7, and
Oh, I wore one too.
why should I make this stand when the rest of everyone else doesn't see the need? And I'm kind of the same way there. I wore my badge because I was a principal, and then when I got into the school committee, I still had that mindset of if the teachers have to do it, everybody should do it. So that's what I have to say.
Hello, thinking of technology and think of all the cameras we're getting nowadays. The weak point, by the way, almost any entry system is, I've never seen anybody challenge somebody when they walk out going in without scanning. Even at the JCC registered with my grandkids, you know, I never forget that I had not had to pass, and they were really worried about security there. So I'd wait somebody walk out, I walk in, never challenged once. So I mean, you always have that. And once somebody's in, are they going to challenge people without badges or without anything? But technology says you can come in. I mean, of course, there's probably laws against it. You can't have sound or anything else. So you have a few cameras in the hallways. It can recognize somebody that didn't scan in. It can go deep. It can alert the principal or somebody at the building. This person's, you know, in the building without ever scanning in, without ever being registered. So there's all kinds of technologies out there to do things, whether that's legal or not in schools, I don't know, but that's what other countries do. In terms of security and safety, you know, kids are in school, they should be seen in school. And there's a kid over here, this person's walking down the hall, and the computer, a camera's up there, says, hey, beep, 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 somebody's walking down the hall, that we don't know who they are, they're not registered to come in the building. So for all that money we're spending on cameras, you can do that. Just thinking outside the box in terms of technology.
I don't have a badge, never was issued a badge, and I don't think I need a badge. The most important thing, though, is the policy of entering a building. Go into the office and they give you a lanyard with a badge. You know, half the time I have to go back to school because I'm wearing it while I'm driving home. But that's the important thing to me. And when we were having a conversation earlier, and there was some talk about we couldn't get our radios to work at one end of this high school to the other, and they wouldn't give us the money for that. If there's going to be money available, I think we have to spend it on direct services for children, and let's go old school and stick with the badges. That's my perspective.
we're looking at the school as if it's a static entity. And at least at the elementary schools, parents are running to get through the door to get the lunch that the kid left on the table. That we've got all kinds of, I think there's like maybe 15 classrooms that on any given day could do any little play or whatever, and you're going to have, 30 people up there to see it, because you've got families and everything else. So it's not as easy as saying, okay, let's have a badge, and we're just going to make sure that the person coming through the door is going to use it. There could be 10 people coming through the door, 20 people coming through the door, so it's something worth looking at if everyone feels strongly about it, but I think it needs to really look at carefully, given the disbursement of the way buildings are used across the district.
See, before you inconvenience people, I always say you need to recognize that we have a problem. So that's the first question, is do we have a problem right now? Do we have a real problem? We need to make changes and start inconveniencing people. Or we're just lucky that we don't have a problem.
With respect to badges for school committee members, I'm not aware of any problems. I'm just trying to clarify what the practice is. I walked into a practice and I can't see it documented anywhere, so I'm not exactly sure what the practice is.
What was the practice in Northampton? Out of curiosity.
The school committee members did not get badges. They signed into buildings and got the Raptor stickers like everyone else.
What about after our, like for the meetings? I guess.
Open meetings don't require badges.
Okay.
It sounds like policy will be discussed in this meeting.
Well,
Just to look at what we currently have, and then, we'll talk about it again next time.
it sounds like we don't even have a policy.
You
Is
can
that
look
I mean, maybe I was just told there was a policy and that I should do it or whatever, but
No, there might
I
be
never
a
read it, the
policy.
policy,
All right.
but maybe
I
there
would,
is.
policy subcommittee would be happy to review. John, whatever policies you can find related to school committee members and their badges, we can discuss and see
Report
what
back.
we want to do.
Okay, very good.
Everyone currently has a badge, just out of
Except for
curiosity?
10.
10 does not have one. And everyone who has a badge actually knows where it is?
In my car, someplace.
In my purse. I take it with me everywhere.
Like the lie detector eyes? Okay.
All right, so we will continue with subcommittee updates. Curriculum subcommittee, Lisa.
No update.
Planning committee. So we just had a meeting, so I updated everybody on the framework that was recommended during the last Hampton Wilbraham Select Board. And the only update on that is their meeting on the 22nd was canceled. There's a concern, Wilbraham has a concern with the grandfathered items that showed up in the 2016 feasibility study, which would also be the pre-existing conditions. So they just have to have further discussion, and they are going to reschedule their meeting. And then we also have some feedback on the current draft of restated regional agreement that I'm going to jump
Sure.
over.
So as some of you may be aware, I had 4 specific questions that the planning committee asked me to bring back to Desi. The first one had to do with some language from section 1 that has to do with weighted voting. It was actually Mr. Davenport who realized that the agreement has called for weighted voting since 1956 or thereabouts. And so the question he posed is, do we have to make such extensive changes around the weighted voted language, or could we make more modest changes which would be less likely to be upsetting to potential voters? And so did get some feedback earlier this afternoon from Desi that it would be sufficient to keep the current language we have in the agreement and add a sentence that describes what the current weighted vote is. So in the version that I shared with the planning committee, earlier today. The new sentence says, as of April 15th, 2025, each Hampton member's vote is 12.5% and each Wilbraham member's vote is 15%. So I think that would satisfy that requirement. The second question had to do around some items from section 4 of the proposed agreement. The specific question had to do with why Jesse was recommending that we specifically talk about some of the terms and conditions of the leases rather than just incorporating them by reference. The answer for that is that MGL Chapter 71, Section 14C requires rental and lease fees and terms of assessment to be spelled out in a regional agreement. And since the items that we're currently talking about have to do with capital costs, which then translate into the assessments, they need to be specified within the agreement. Further question had to do with the $5,000 capital cost regulation, or I should say definition that's embedded in regulation. And the question was whether the district could have a different definition of capital. And so the answer to that is no. The statutory definition is any item with a cost of $5,000 or more and a lifespan of more than 1 year must be considered capital. However, we can have language in the agreement that talks about how we deal with our capital items. So we could say that the district is responsible for capital projects of less than a certain value. So that really goes more to reporting than changing any of our practices. I think the concern that some members of the planning committee felt was when they saw the $5,000 amount, did that mean that our capital requests were going to become pages long because, you know, every window or door that needed to be repaired would probably more than $5,000 and hit that capital threshold? But the answer to that is no. But nevertheless, we don't have the authority to change the definition of what capital is. Next item, as the final item, had to do with some concerns about language that we have for section 1, specifically stating that since the terms of the committee members don't begin immediately after the election, whether the language that we currently have in here about the terms being made clear to candidates and to voters conflicts with some regulations around what may appear on a ballot. We were told that the Secretary of State in an email exchange with Desi had provided some guidance on this, recommending that the language that they had recommended to us about it being made clear to candidates and voters should be included in the regional agreement. I asked if they could forward that so that I can make it available to members of the planning committee as well as members of the school committee, which they said they would do. They also said if it was a concern and they wanted, and either members of the school committee or the select boards wanted to have more definitive guidance from the Secretary of State, they would be happy to go to the Secretary of State and ask for a memorandum telling us to put this in the agreement. So that's the feedback I got.
So the last time I cast my vote for president, I don't recall the ballot saying that, oh, the elected successful candidate won't actually be taking office until January 12th. And the vote was like in the first week of November. So I don't understand why there's a problem with what we're doing, because it's known Inauguration Day is January 12th. It's not a secret. It's publicly available information. Is it January 12th? 20. There we go. Yeah, and figure out. Look at me, I'm going to get it wrong, right? So if it's publicly known that the term of the school committee starts on July 1st, I don't understand the problem.
So this is a little bit speculative, so take this with a grain of salt. I think the reason that this may be recommended is because the default in Massachusetts for any municipal election is that members take their seat immediately upon election being qualified or certified for the position. So if you deviate from that, you have to make it known that you're going to use a different practice.
I think we're the only elected official in town that does not take the new role, right after the election.
We do take it right after the election, but it's, we go to the town clerk and we do our signing, but we're not on the job until, much later on.
So then this brings the next question that I was going to ask. I understand the reasons why we have it not switched until July 1st, and it's not that they're not good reasons, but are they really good enough for us to continue to get tortured over this? And perhaps we might consider switching it back to the day of the election like all the other municipals, and then we don't have to keep talking to the lawyers and keep talking to Desi and keep talking to the state. I pose the question to the committee. I understand and I respect the reasons why we do it, and I don't disagree with it, but are they really enough that it's worth the torture?
I think we had this discussion before, and I think part of it was how the school year cycles and evaluations of the superintendent, and it'd be really hard for a person who went in on the same as election day to be then able to finish out the evaluation of the superintendent.
I understand and I agree with all of that, but that's not my question. Is it worth the torture?
Yeah.
As you say, as a point of information, I would say that Desi has no problem with the practice. It just wants us to make sure that we clarify the practice. There are lots of other school committees where an election happens and then members don't take their seats right away. They're just saying, if that is to be our practice, we need to make it clear to everyone that that's what we're doing.
Potentially in a school, in a year, an election year, we could be electing 3 new people, 2 from Oberham, 1 from Hamden, that's 42%. So I think that the thought was that the work that we have going on, it would be good to have everybody there. Either way works. I've only known this way. This is the only way that we've done it here since I've been elected, but I don't know if this is something we want to go back to. I have no problem with that.
Is it worth the torture?
You had asked,
Is it worth the torture?
I believe it is.
Okay.
My personal opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
It's
John
torture.
says it's worth the torture.
All right, so it's worth the torture, so what do we need to do? What are the barriers for
So
continuing?
They want it on the ballot that it
Well,
says.
we can't put it on the ballot. The ballot people say we can't read it.
Well, I don't, actually, the town clerk said they could do that. It's only come up because a member of the planning committee has raised some concerns about whether that's permitted. So I think the ruling of the Secretary of State, who has the authority to oversee all elections, would be probably persuasive in helping to address that concern.
Did both town clerks agree to that?
Yeah, so I had asked them, just the technical question, could it be like school committee member terms to begin July 1st, whatever, and they both said that in the preparation of the ballot, that's not a technical problem. The only question that has been posed by this individual is whether that's permitted.
But we're still waiting for the official ruling from the Secretary of State on this.
Correct. As soon as I get that email, I will forward it. We had that last meeting earlier today.
Yes.
Okay.
The one thing I did fail to mention earlier regarding the joint Board of Select meeting was that the last meeting I reported the original framework that was presented. Then sort of a response or kind of a conversation, a memo that was sent to between the boards there was a discussion of suggesting that maybe they did the 80-20 split on capital costs, but because both towns would be voting on whether or not to do the capital costs, that would be a 50-50 vote. between the two towns. That was the other piece that I did not mention. Sean, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that means that if one town says no to the new windows, then the new windows don't happen.
Correct.
It was a very interesting meeting. I think that Wilbraham and Hamden, they're close to getting a consensus, or I'd like to believe that. So regardless of the conversations that were going back and forth, so I think it's very positive. Do you agree, Michelle?
I do. I think they're making considerations and they're talking about it. So that's all we can ask at this time. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, so we will now discuss the remaining of Wilbraham Middle School. John?
So in your packet, I put the policy regarding renaming of schools. This is something that has come up in discussion of the future status of the building currently known as Wilbraham Middle School. I just wanted you to be aware of the process that's already part of your policy. Because I believe that there is interest among several parties to give the school a new name if it's going to serve the students of both communities. And so I just want everyone to be aware of the process. It's not something that's done quickly or without a good deal of thought and input. And so if, as part of the new regional agreement, there was a desire to rename Wilbraham Middle School, I would anticipate that process would probably take most of a year when you consider all the steps that are included in the policy and all the considerations.
Anybody throwing out any names yet?
I have not heard any.
Just as a point, I just want to make sure that in the district I teach in, we did rename the school like 2 years ago. And I don't know if we have different policies, but I would highly recommend that the staff and the stakeholders of Wilbraham Middle School be included in that decision. So, I mean, I see in our policy it is, but I just want to make sure that actually happens.
So we don't initiate that process as a school committee.
Well, you know, under the policy, it's initiated when a new facility needs to be named. I think that, or renamed. Says the school committee has the authority to approve the naming or renaming of facilities. The school committee also has the authority to name subsections. So, and then it talks about the process that is supposed to be undertaken in order to solicit potential names for a new building or a renamed building. So I think it would take an act of the school committee to at least say, we're considering renaming a facility and would like the community to submit potential names. And then at the end,
in favor of that.
I make a motion to put it out to the general public that we are soliciting new names for the Wilbraham Middle School.
Is that the way
We
you
don't
have to
have
do
a
it?
vote.
We don't have a vote on the
So
thing.
we can say that we are entertaining, and we can put that on the next agenda for an official vote. But I think if we all come to consensus, saying if there's interest,
I think I would agree with that consensus, and I also agreed with Lisa's sentiments. I think instead of saying out to the community, I think the renaming effort should start with the faculty of the middle school. And then, hypothetically, they might come up with a few suggestions, and then might be polled wider in the district, and then, we could, informally engage members of the community to see if there's happiness.
Yeah, I would prefer it to be thrown out to the staff at the middle school and see what they come up with, what they think is it's their second home, so, to see what process they come up with.
I'm just saying the policy says submission of a name for a school space may be made by any resident or by the superintendent in writing and should be made to the school committee chairperson.
Yes,
But then continuing on,
where
it
that
says,
name comes from.
Right.
right, if you continue in that paragraph, it says, if a name is being initiated at a local school level, the principal may take reasonable steps to include all stakeholders in the nomination of the name before submission to the school committee. So to me, that says the principal could ask faculty and staff for ideas, even if they were non-residents.
I stand corrected, okay?
Could I just point out, just a consideration? I personally, my own opinion, agree that, you know, if we take the steps to formally change the status of the middle school, a new name would be not only appropriate, but potentially something to help generate some positive movement in the community. But I wonder if it might have some potential negative repercussions to make that vote before there's been a vote to change the agreement.
Okay. I think that's a great consideration.
So it made me put on the agenda because it's something that's come up in the planning committee a few times, and we've been talking about the regional building and just the renaming and kind of the effect that that would have with all of the students in the district attending that one school. So we will leave it. We're not doing a formal vote this evening, but it's certainly something that's just we will potentially be talking about in the future.
Is this maybe something that we can refer to the planning committee as well? Because if I remember correctly, it was the Wilbraham, I thought it was Mark Ducey, that was the one that said we should stop calling it Wilbraham Middle School and we should start calling it something else right now. And that was the Wilbraham representative on that planning committee. That was the person that brought it up. So I do understand and appreciate what you're saying, John. It is true, but yeah, maybe we should just send some feelers out to the community to see what the community thinks. If they say, yeah, let's make sure this plan goes before you change the name, okay.
I actually really respect John's comments, and my opinion would be that this is shelved until after the amendment to the regional agreement is passed. That would be my thought. I don't know if other people have consensus with that. We're not doing anything formal today.
I agree with that. I don't think we should initiate this. I think it should come from the community or the school. I don't think we should initiate this. We've got enough on our plate right now without adding another, because it's got to be a community outreach. It can't be a simple thing like that. And if we're not hearing from somebody that there's, immediate need to change this, and with the possibility of this whole Wilbraham Middle School, district middle school, let's get that out of the way first before, let's not create another problem for ourselves.
Anything else? Okay, so this was just basically to bring awareness and the possibility of a conversation down the road. And to your point, I don't know that people know that it's a possibility to change the name of the building. So we can talk about this at a later date once things are further along. So we will continue moving on. So we are Finance and Operations Subcommittee. Sean?
We have nothing to report.
Okay. LPVEC Collaborative Representative? Lisa?
I have nothing to report. I have a meeting tomorrow.
Negotiation Subcommittee, nothing to report. Policy Subcommittee, Mike?
We have the first reading on the following policies. EEA, Student Transportation Services. EEAA, Walkers and Riders. ECAF, Security Cameras in Schools. The honor roll determination, we didn't make any, there was some discussion, I guess, to report to the committee about our current policy for determining honor roll, high honor roll in the high school. And it was a great discussion, but we're not recommending any changes to that policy. But the particularly after very insightful and helpful input from the principal of the high school.
So does it need a reading if we're not changing it?
I'm just giving an update on that. It was discussed, and it was something that started at the committee level, was referred to policy, and that there's been no change. There's not an official, there's not actually a policy governing it. It's something that's done by the faculty, and it's not going to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is maybe confusing the way it appears on the agenda. It probably should have been item 2, honorable determination. It's not really a reading. It's just saying the policy subcommittee considered the item and is recommending to leave it alone.
And John, do you agree?
Yes.
Thank you.
Move to accept the policy committee's recommendation.
This is just a first reading, so we're not looking for a vote yet. It's when there's a third reader. And hopefully I'll remember to say that I'm looking for a vote. Well, I might forget. LTVAC Corporation representative, there's nothing to report. There hasn't been a meeting.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. So now we're on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you. First, as you know, we've scheduled our first equity walk for May 27th from 3:15 to 4:15 in the Minichog Auditorium. I hope this experience will foster a greater sense of community and shared responsibility for the success of our schools. It's intended to provide an opportunity for reflection and discussion away from the high-stakes conversations about material and financial resources in a way that builds understanding and community so that we're better prepared to work together for our students. Just so you know, essentially all the elected officials and appointed officials have been invited to the conversation. Parents who hold formal leadership roles within our building, such as school council members or PTO members, students who have formal leadership roles within our school. And, you know, part of the idea here is that one of the challenges around community in schools writ large is that it tends to happen on a cyclical basis, and it tends to happen when we need a budget. And so it can be a hard time to form relationships and to just have community because the stakes are so high. And so this is a way to just stay in community and build relationships and build understanding of what we're trying to do in the schools and some of the challenges that we're facing in the schools at a time when we're not asking for anything other than just to be together and to talk about what we can do. Secondly, we're eagerly anticipating announcements concerning the designation of innovation pathways for the 25-26 school year. We had hoped to have some information to share by now. We have scheduled information sessions for students in grades 7 and 8 at 2:15 on Thursday, May 1st in the middle school auditorium, and for families and students at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 30th, also in the auditorium. As soon as we receive notification from DESE, we'll formally extend invitations to our current 7th and 8th grade families. We'll also be in the process of scheduling something for our current 9th grade families who may want to join the pathway, because you can still join as a sophomore. Once again, just waiting for official permission to proceed from DESE. And so then finally, directing your attention to the document in your packet entitled SOA Plan Progress Report. As you know, in spite of the fact that our SOA funding is minimal or non-existent because the district is in minimum aid status under Chapter 70, we were nevertheless required to submit a plan explaining how we were going to use our SOA funding to implement evidence-based practices, and now we are required to report on how we're doing that. Once again, in spite of the fact that there really was no funding with it.
pages.
Yeah.
Do we at least get $1 a page?
No, that is, it's basically an unfunded mandate that we have to go and we have to put all this work together and we have to send it out even though we get zero funding from this program.
That's correct. So the evidence-based practices in our SOA plan are highlighted on page 3 of the document we were just referencing. They are high leverage practices for students with disabilities, targeted academic support and acceleration, authentic post-secondary training, and high-quality secondary pathways and programs. Key implementation activities are listed on page 5 of the plan, and they included updating our MTSS catalog of aligned supports, providing professional development to strengthen our Tier 1 practices, continuing our curriculum and development and documentation, and implementing high-quality evidence-based SEL curriculum, expanding vocational opportunities for students, and applying for designation for an innovation career pathway. In the evidence of change section that begins on page 6, we focused on a subgroup that I don't talk about all that much because it's a statistically created subgroup known as the lowest performing student subgroup. And it's the one that we're asked to really focus on our SOA plans. Now, there's a 7-page technical report that explains how the lowest performing subgroup is established. So there's nuance here, but I'll gloss over a lot of that by stating that in general, the lowest performing student subgroup is the group of students who performed below the 25th local percentile on the previous year's MCAS testing. And, in case you're wondering, for the purpose of determining accountability ratings, each school receives performance targets for students in the aggregate and for students in the lowest performing subgroup. Benchmark ratings are then averaged to determine the rating for the school, which means that 63% of a school's accountability rating is based on the performance of the lowest performing subgroup. Please see the equation displayed behind me to explain why this is so. It might be easier to say so. Your lowest performing subgroup is half, and then all the students are half, but the lowest performing students are also part of all the students. So that group is about 63% of your overall rating. So why it's useful to attend to it, especially in your SOA planning. So how do we do with them? In grades K to 8, chronic absenteeism for the lowest performing student subgroup dropped from 14% to 8.8%, and math performance increased, falling just below their improvement target. Unfortunately, ELA performance declined slightly. In high school, chronic absenteeism in this group worsened slightly from 16.1% to 17.2%. However, the achievement of this group improved in both ELA and math, but fell just short of their targets for ELA and math. Between 23 and 24, the rates of students subject to in-school and out-of-school suspension or emergency removals fell from 6.5% to 5.8% for low-income students, from 6.8% to 6.5% for students with disabilities, from 5.6% to 4.8% for high-needs students, from 4.9% to 3.6% for male students, from 3.2 to 1.5% for Asian students, from 8.1 to 4.3% for African American or Black students, and from 7.7 to 7.6 for Hispanic or Latino students, and from 6.7 to 2.3% for multiracial students, and from 2.4 to 2% for white students. Suspension rates remain the same at 1.6% and 0% for female students and English learners, respectively. Overall, our district made moderate progress towards improving academic performance of students with disabilities and low-income students. Low-income students demonstrated their greatest performance improvements in science and technology engineering, where the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations increased from 25% to 35% in grades 5 and 8, and from 35% to 45% in grade 10. Both groups of students showed small gains in mathematics in grades 3 through 8, but these were offset by performance declines in grade 10. In ELA, both groups showed small performance declines in grades 3 through 8, but students with disabilities showed improvements in grade 10. While the student performance improvements in science and technology are encouraging, the mixed results in the other core academic areas warrant further attention. Through the new IEP process, we're hoping to enhance progress monitoring for students with disabilities with the goal of accelerating their academic growth. So even though we didn't receive any specifically targeted SOA funds, we're still able to make progress in a number of areas identified under our SOA plan. And based on this, we will not be making any major adjustments to our plan for next year, but simply building on the work and strategies that we already have in place. And that's my report.
Any questions or comments for John? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next meeting is on Thursday, May 15th, here at 6:30. We do the need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, free to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. HWEA Unit A, C, clerical and custodial.
So moved.
Second.
We will be adjourning from executive session. We will not be returning to regular session. We will do roll call to move into executive session. Following up, then we'll have a 5-minute break. We'll begin with Cheryl. Tim,
Yes.
Sean,
Aye.
Lisa,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yep.
and myself, I. We are adjourned from regular session, 7:41.